I suppose I can't round out a week of covering the Bishops' Conference in Baltimore without talking about the Silent Stops Now rally that a few subscribers to this channel are actually attending. I hope you managed to stay warm out there, as it looks like an epic snowstorm is now pummeling the northeastern United States. Regardless, a sizable crowd showed up to protest. You can always tell the grassroots protests from the AstroTurf protests. As an aside, to AstroTurf means to create the illusion of a grassroots campaign by bussing in protesters, handing them professional signs, selling them identifiable pink hats with obscene names, or even paying them. These are all well-documented tactics of organizations funded by billionaires like George Soros and certain political parties in the United States. They're incredibly effective at mobilizing people. Thankfully, the Silent Stops Now rally was not one of those events. Everyday Catholics gathered of their own volition and love for our Eucharistic Lord and His Church in Baltimore to send a message to the bishops who were meeting. I haven't seen an estimate of the numbers attending yet. I know that prior to the gathering of the bishops, Church Militant estimated about 3,000 lay faithful were driving in from literally every diocese in the contiguous United States to attend. I also know that a few subscribers have promised to get footage and send it to me, which I will upload to this channel when I get it. LifeSite News has an on-the-ground report from Baltimore about what the protesters wanted. Headline: Catholic laity rally at U.S. bishops' meeting, demand they admit homosexuality behind the abuse crisis. Baltimore, Maryland, the 15th of November. The contrast was stunning. The nation's bishops, comfortably ensconced in a luxury waterfront hotel for their fall General Assembly, could peer out through their broad expanses of windows at the hundreds of lay people gathered outside in the cold, damp air, hoping the bishops would hear their pleas to rid the church of its homosexual clergy cancer. Concerned Catholics from all over the country descended on Baltimore to be within earshot of the bishops, traveling from New England, the Midwest, Florida, Texas, California, and everywhere in between. And while nearly every one of the nation's prelates was next door at the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops meeting, only one cared enough to leave the hotel to greet the faithful, hear their concerns, and pray with them. My flock back in Texas said, "Go and pray with those people," explained the Bishop Strickland of Tyler, Texas, who gave his blessing to participants of the Silent Stops Now rally as they filed into the MECU Pavilion, located on a pier next to the Marriott Inner Harbor Hotel. To those gathered, Strickland appeared to be the only shepherd with a shepherd's heart. One another prelate had a strong presence at the meeting, although he was not there, Archbishop Carlos Maria Vigano. Many wore bright pink Vigano buttons and Viganos t-shirts. And as Church Militant's Michael Voris, chief organizer of the event, told the crowd of the Archbishop's message to the U.S. bishops earlier in the day, urging them to confront sex abuse as courageous shepherds rather than frightened sheep, the delighted crowd began chanting in unison, "Vigano, Vigano, Vigano." LifeSite News asked those gathered at the Silent Stops Now rally why they had made their way to the rally, some at great expense, and what personal message they would like to deliver to their bishops. Admit to the heart of the problem, homosexuality in the priesthood. I would like for my own bishop, Bishop Robert McElroy of San Diego, to admit that the problem is about homosexuality, not clericalism or abuse of power, said Allison Smith, who traveled across the country for the event. The problem is homosexual predation that needs to be confronted, continued Smith, adding, the truth about that will set us free. Patrick Ron of Youngstown, Ohio, was strident. Bishops, you've got to stop being afraid of using the H word. This is a homosexual crisis. Stop ordaining homosexuals and get rid of the homosexuals in the priesthood that are the cancer of the church. The bishops had better learn that the Catholic laity are angry because they know what is going on, said John Olenek of Saratoga Springs, New York. It's a homosexual problem, and nobody will admit that openly or publicly. You have to admit what the problem is and then get rid of the problem. Dan Godot of New Hampshire said the bishops need to admit that this is about more than clericalism, that this is an issue of homosexuality within the priesthood and the episcopate, and remind themselves of what the Catechism says about homosexuality. Message from parents: we can't trust you. Be bold and courageous, urged Gary Cummings of West Virginia, and restore sanctity to their position. There is no way any parent in America will entrust their children to a seminary at this point if they continue on this path, added Cummings. Judy Murray, who traveled from Texas with her 2 sisters, issued a similar plea. We want our bishops to shepherd us. We don't want to be afraid of our little children becoming altar boys and something happening to them with a predator priest. They also had messages like that they needed to admit the truth or resign from their bishops, and that they needed to listen to Vigano. I'll let you read the rest of that on LifeSite News. A link is in the description. Clearly, the church needs more bishops like Bishop Tyler of Strickland, Texas. This is especially true considering the final vote tally of the Bishops' Conference, which, to repeat what was said earlier, was a vote of 83 to 137 against demanding the release of Vatican documents concerning the disgraced former Cardinal McCarrick. The letter to the bishops released by the NRB said specifically that over 130 bishops were implicated in the covering up of crimes against children, teenagers, and seminarians by priests and bishops. That's a pretty spooky vote total, given that. Many of us are wondering who these 137 bishops were. A few came out and said that they voted in support of the release of McCarrick's records. Concretely, we don't know for sure who voted correctly, but indications are that Bishop Robert Barron voted to release documents, as did Bishop Strickland of Tyler, Texas, and a few others. Here's Bishop Barron, to my continued delight, speaking in support of releasing the documents on McCarrick.
The crisis really begins with the revelations about Archbishop McCarrick, and as I listen to the people of God, this is still a major concern for them, that we get to the bottom of how he was able to rise so high in the hierarchy, how he continued to have such a disproportionate influence, it seems, in the life of the church, even after retirement. I know, Cardinal DiNardo, you called last summer for that investigation. I strongly supported that. After some resistance, it seems, from the Holy See, in October, we got the indication that they were very open to opening up the files, etc. I'm just curious, first of all, the status of that. It seems to me, unless someone is appointed to do the investigation, it remains just a kind of velleity. And I'm wondering if we can bring any sort of, respectful pressure to bear.
We know that those who voted against it include Cardinals Cupich, Tobin, and McElroy, none of which is surprising. All 3 are known to be avowed advocates for the Bay Area lifestyle. If we want to find out who voted in that way, a good place to start is on the website Church Transparency. They have a handy map that shows which bishops have spoken in support of transparency, and if they spoke in support of Archbishop Vigano. To get a better look at the data, let's have a look at a video I made of the website itself. Alright, so we're looking at the website Church Transparency. We can see George Murray supporting an investigation. Let's see, scrolling, has a nice zoom out feature and zoom in. Alan Vigneron, Daniel Thomas, Kevin Rhodes, Bradley, Wally Balkway, can't pronounce his name, Molino, Mundloy, Supich was against, Michael Jackals was against. Let's see, Joseph Tobin, of course, usual crowd, Donald Wuerl, of course. Let's continue here. Scrolling west, going to the western United States now. Gigantic dioceses here. Robert McElroy was opposed. Keep scrolling. We keep scrolling. We see that Dino Flores was neutral, as was James Tomeo, Bishop Cahill, Bishop Vasquez, Bishop Lopez was neutral. Daniel DiNardo, the president of the council, was for and supported Vigano. That's a positive sign for the Conference of Bishops. Curtis Gilroy was for, as was Bishop Provost, Michael Siss, Bishop Olson, Bishop Burns of Dallas, Bishop Strickland of Tyler. How an empty seat in Shreveport supports investigation, I'm not sure. A little closer to home for me, Paul Coakley and Slattery both supported, although Slattery is not actually the Bishop of Tulsa. You get the idea. Interestingly, this website has 164 recorded statements from various bishops. According to their data, 46% oppose or are neutral, and 54% support releasing documents. Yet when the time came to vote the actual vote total against the Vatican to release the documents wasn't even close to this number. I suppose it's easy to express support for an investigation in a pastoral letter, but when the time comes to vote, knowing that your career prospects are on the line or that your own records show that your predecessor, or worse, you yourself, covered up sexual predation, voting becomes a much more difficult thing to do. Maybe they should have listened to Archbishop Vigano, who told them not to be afraid. It's never too late to repent of past errors. One thing that continues to surprise me in this ongoing and building crisis in the church is that the cast of characters speaking in support of the releasing of files and in support of Archbishop Vigano continues to surprise me. I'm not a big fan of Bishop Robert Barron's theology, to say the least, though I certainly see value in his sort of basic Catholicism 101 media work he does. But his support is important to note because of his stature. And I do take it as a positive sign that Cardinal DiNardo, the president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, is supporting an investigation, despite how poorly he is reported to have treated the journalists of Church Militant who asked him questions at the hotel. Perhaps we should cut him a bit of slack, given that he is the captain of the Titanic as it's going down right now. Keep praying for the church, please, and pray that God's justice comes soon, and that those responsible have a real conversion of heart before it is too late. If you like videos like this, like and share this video and subscribe, and click that notification bell below. You can support my work if you want to through Patreon. A link is found in the description below, along with links to my Twitter, the blog, and the Facebook page I manage. For Return to Tradition, I'm Anthony Stein. Ave Maria.